Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Pakistan Tech Summit. Today we have Mr. Khurrum, and I am Saleha, and I'll be the host for the event today. Mr. Khurrum is the Senior Software Development Manager at Amazon Web Services. And today we will be talking about seizing the opportunity. How, in this COVID pandemic, can we make use of different opportunities? How things were different, how things are different right now, and how can we make the most out of the situation in this pandemic? So we have Mr. Khurram here. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Khurram. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam Swaliha. It's an honor to be here. I'm doing very well.
It's great to have you on here, Mr. Khurram. How are things going on in your part of the world?
Okay, so I think we are doing pretty well actually. So I am in Seattle, Washington, which is
Mhm.
the Western United States, and Seattle was one of the first cities in the US where the COVID-19 epidemic started, and we were the first to go into the lockdown mode. And
Oh,
now we are just coming out of it. But I think things have things have gone pretty well compared to how bad they could have been. So I think we have been lucky. I think one thing which Seattle and the state of Washington did pretty early was that they trusted the scientific advice coming from University of Washington.
oh,
Actually, if you look at the COVID-19 epidemic models that have been used widely in the world, the University of Washington Epidemiology Center's model is actually one of the foremost ones. So they recommended everyone stay home and start working from home. I think the other big advantage which we had was that Seattle is a big tech hub. So two of the biggest tech companies in the world, Microsoft and Amazon, they are based here in Seattle. So it was relatively easy for a lot of people to start working from home. So I think that also helped.
that's great. And I hope similar happens for Pakistan very soon. And I hope we get out of the situation pretty well. But we all know that even after this, all of this ends, COVID-19 disappears from the world, the work ethic, the work things that we have right now won't be the same anymore. So this is what we are gonna talk about today. But before that, I would want you to give a basic introduction of yourself. Just like I mentioned in the beginning, that you are a software development manager at Amazon Web Services. So would you like to tell the audience more about yourself? What's your journey? What's your story?
Yeah, sure. I think I can talk about that. So I am from Karachi, Pakistan. I was raised in Karachi. Went to the school and the university there. So I graduated from NED University of Engineering and Technology in 1998. My major was electrical engineering, and I
Oh,
think that was a time where I remember the internet service was just starting in Pakistan. So there was an organization called UNDP. I don't know if this still operates. It's called United Nations
yeah, it does.
Development Program,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it does.
they started uh, an email service in Pakistan. Actually, one of my friends used to work there, and you had to pay ₹3 per kilobyte of data transfer.
Oh,
So if somebody sent you like an email attachment or a long email, we will actually say that यार अब तुमने जो है ना वो ₹3 देने हैं मेरे.
thank
So
you.
anyway, so I graduated from NED University. Then I did my master's from a university in Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia, actually, they have done a lot of investment in higher education. There is a university called King Fahad University of Petroleum and Minerals. Uh, they call it Jamiatul Malik Fahad Lil Batrol wal Ma'adan. So
Oh,
it is in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. The city's name is Zahran. So I did my master's from there. Again, my major was signal processing and communications. And uh, I think that was actually a great experience because I get to meet a lot of people from all over the world who come to KFUPM for education. And then I worked there for a number of years. And then I actually ended up moving to Canada. I think it was 2002, some point in time. And then over years, I worked for different companies, but uh, I actually started working for Amazon Web Services around 8.5, 9 years ago. So that's where I have been. I think one thing which maybe I will call out is that I have gone through a lot of transitions. Uh, Actually, Howard did a research, I think, some time ago that less than 10% of the university graduates they end up working in the major they actually do in their universities, because the
Oh,
opportunities come and you actually end up doing different things. I think the same is true for me. I used to be very passionate about signal processing and communications. Uh, but then I think when I graduated, you know, the way the opportunities lined up, uh, I ended up in software development and eventually in Amazon Web Services. So uh, that's where I
yeah, so
am.
this was supposed to be my next question because I was very like surprised when you told that you graduated from electrical engineering in from
Hmm.
NAD, and even
Yeah.
in your masters you weren't in really software hardcore
Hmm.
software engineering. So yeah,
Hmm.
that was supposed to be my next question, that how did you end up transitioning to software development from electrical engineering, and how do you feel about it now? And yeah, that's the story.
Sure. I feel really good about it. I think what ends up happening is that when you go to the university, well, what you really learn is how to learn things. And then you kind of start applying how to learn things depending on what you start doing. So when I graduated, I started working in networking, internet networking, and a lot of people from electrical engineering background, they do internet networking because there are a lot of things which are kind of, I guess, common or interesting. Uh, and then I moved into information security. So I worked in information security for around 10 years. I started the first information security team for KFUPM, actually pretty much in Saudi Arabia. I did some work for Saudi Aramco as well for their industrial cybersecurity. And at that time, where I think it was a time where internet was just becoming ubiquitous, everyone was getting connected, and I'm talking about early 2000s, and a lot of security issues started popping up. Because if you look at the history of internet was designed to be open, and it allows everyone to connect to everyone. And when you do that, and when in the beginning everyone trusts everyone and you are a tight knit community, that kind of works. But eventually it evolves like a society. So when it evolves from a village to a city to a country to the whole world, now you need security. So I started doing that. Then I worked in application security for a while. When I moved to Canada, I actually was working for Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Company, HSBC, running their application security teams and also their payment security teams. So I started from internet networking. I transitioned into network security because in early 2000s, if you somebody said I work in security, it used to mean you're working on firewalls, and that was true for a while. And then obviously things became more sophisticated, and people realized that it's way more than just network security. Uh, and then when I moved to Amazon, uh, I had a lot of friends in Amazon Web Services. A very close friend of mine, he used to work for Simple Storage Service, which is actually the largest storage service on the planet. And I got intrigued by what do they do. So uh, I took it on myself to start learning about distributed systems. Because if you look at Amazon Web Services, uh, the type of software development we do are large scale distributed systems, and it is a fascinating field, and it was a learning curve for me. So then I joined S3, which is a simple storage service. I still own parts of S3, and then you kind of start doing different things. So at present, I am in the I own the data plane for elastic load balancing. Just to give you a brief introduction, if you want to build a highly resilient large scale system, typically what you will end up doing is that you will run your system behind a load balancer, and the load balancer will allow your system to scale. So let's say you have to go from 10 users to 1,000 users, 100,000, a million, 10 million, 100 million. You know, we have the technology to seamlessly scale you. Actually, some of the biggest companies in the world, they use this technology. For example, I think Netflix is in Pakistan now. So if you're using,
I'm not sure.
yeah, but
Yeah,
if
I
you're
mentioned
using,
that.
yeah, but if you're using Netflix, for example, they run behind our
Mhm.
technology. And if you kind of see,
Oh,
there are big differences in the viewership. Like at prime time, when you can have up to 100 million people watching Netflix, maybe early in the morning you have only a few million. So having a technology which allows you to kind of scale like that, that is super important. So that's what elastic load balancing provides. So I'm part of that team right now.
okay, great. So just like you mentioned while sharing your story, that your story contains a lot of changes, and so the change in field, the change in location, like just like you mentioned, you graduated from NED, and then you moved to Saudi Arabia, you worked there, and then you moved to Canada, and now you're in Seattle. So there has been a lot of change
Hmm.
in your story, in your journey.
Hmm.
So, so what do you? So what makes you think that this change happened? Because there are a lot of people who start off with one thing and then they stay in there forever. But what do you think that? What was the thing in you that made you transition from different things, whether it is a field, whether it is a location, or whatever?
Hmm.
So,
So I
change
think,
comes up with a
yeah,
lot of
sure,
fears and challenges. So,
yeah,
it's not easy to make changes. So, what do you
yeah,
think? What made you do that?
yeah. Swaliha, I think I have been somewhat deliberate. It's not 100% deliberate, but I can tell you, and everyone has a different journey. But for me, uh, when I uh, when I moved, let's say, if you look at my first transition, I used to work in internet networking actually, setting up large networks for the university. Uh, then uh, I started talking to some people. I was following technology, and security just seemed to be very intriguing. It was maybe the curiosity part of it. So I started playing with things, and then I realized that this thing is actually important. It is important, for the internet to work in a safe manner. And then, I said, okay, let's learn it. Uh, and then I started learning that stuff. And then when you're part of an organization, obviously, you have to look at the business side of it. You have to convince people, you have to influence people that you have to do these things. So I started doing that. Uh, my transition into Amazon Web Services actually was also very deliberate because AWS, I was a user of AWS. When I was in Amazon, I did not start with Amazon Web Services. I was actually part of the Amazon's payment security team because I used to do payment security for Hong Kong and Shanghai banking company, HSBC. That's what I did in
Mhm.
Amazon for a while, maybe for a year and a half. And then actually a friend of mine, he gave me some reading material on distributed systems. If somebody is interested, there is a seminal paper which some people in Amazon wrote. I think now it's been like maybe 18, 20 years on DynamoDB. So if you just search
Oh,
DynamoDB AWS paper, it will come up. And that was a completely new paradigm because if you kind of think about it, up until 10 years ago, uh, the way we used to build software was large scale monolithic systems. So you will have big web servers, you will have huge databases. Actually, I think databases are even a bigger problem because that's where you save the state. And uh, when Amazon started growing, Amazon realized that that paradigm is just not going to scale anymore. And there are a lot of technological reasons for that. Uh, but to put it very simply, let's say if you were to run something like Amazon.com or a Google.com, and backed by a monolithic SQL type database like Oracle, whatever, there is not a server on the planet, where which will actually work for you. And that was like 10 years ago. I mean, obviously, things have become very large after that. So I got very intrigued by why the technology was invented, and the inner mechanics of that technology as well, because it's very fascinating. There are some very deliberate compromises have been made on how things have been done. And I'll tell you a very interesting thing. One of the uh, most senior Amazon engineers, he's our distinguished engineer. His name is James Hamilton. He does not even have a formal education. He used to be a car mechanic.
Oh.
So that kind of tells you that you can actually learn whatever you want to learn. So when I started reading about distributed systems, I got more and more intrigued about those things. And then there was an opportunity. It's like, okay, S3 is looking for some people. They were looking for someone who had some security experience as well as some software background. Would you like to come and join? The great thing, at least for Amazon, is that you can just move around and do different things. Sorry, that was a very lengthy answer, but yeah.
Yeah, informative regardless. So, so from your story, I've been thinking that when so how you make transitions, what your life choices become, it really depends on the times you are living in, right? So just
Hmm.
like you mentioned that during your time, internet was being newly introduced and things like that, so you become interested in that domain. So the times you are living in really affect your life choices, your personal decisions, right?
Hmm.
So the time that we are living in right now, let me now transition to our the topic of the talk. So the time
Hmm.
that we are living in right now are very unprecedented. Nobody expected that to happen. Even when I
Hmm.
think of myself, I was in university, and the other day everything starts to shut down, and you were like, okay,
Hmm.
that's going to happen for 1 week, and then it extended,
Hmm.
and we don't know when it's going to end now.
Hmm.
So now we will be talking about the opportunities that we have in this pandemic, and what's the future of work going to be after this pandemic ends. So let's just start off with our topic first. And since I'm talking about opportunities continuously. So what kind of opportunities are we talking about? Would you like to elaborate more on that?
Absolutely. So I think one thing I will say is that I think this is the best time to be alive for anyone in the world, regardless of where you are. You can be in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, even a small village in Africa. If anyone was given a choice on where, at what point in history they should be living, I think they should be choosing June 2020. And I know it might sound interesting that I'm making this comment because you open up your browser or you open up your Facebook or whatever, and all you hear about is all the bad things happening in the world. And I think what is happening is that our social networking and our media, it acts as an amplifier of bad news. So
Yeah.
the thing you can do to ruin your day if you want to start your day is to start your day by looking at the news, and then you'll feel bad for the rest of your day. But let's look at the numbers. What has happened in the last 20 years or even 50 years, or even if you look at this epidemic. Let's just maybe start with this epidemic. This is not the first epidemic in history. We Mankind has been facing epidemics uh, since the dawn of humanity. But there are hadiths about epidemic, on how to behave in the epidemic. But if you look at the latest one, the Great Plague of London, the whole city was destroyed. Actually, the whole Europe was destroyed. And actually, if you go back uh, uh, about on the Great Plague epidemic, which happened during the, I think, 1400s and 1500s. 60% of the people in the Europe died. And actually, it was so bad that the European population, it did not recover for 200 years. So
Oh.
actually, there was a period of time in history where the population actually went down, because typically the population trend is always on the upward trend. The
Mm.
population went down and it did not recover for 200 years. That's how bad it was. People didn't know what to do. Obviously, they were speculating. I think they knew that this is something contagious we get from each other, but other than that, they just couldn't know what to do about it. Even if you look at 100 years ago, we are talking about in Spanish influenza. In Spanish influenza, the estimates are that 50 to 100 million people died.
Oh.
So it was really bad. I mean, it's very sad what is happening with COVID, but I'm just trying to put things in the bigger perspective, that why this is the even epidemics are always going to be with us. We have some epidemic today. There was an AIDS epidemic 30 years ago. But if I were to choose the time in history, we should still be choosing 2020, because we are best equipped to deal with the epidemics right now. I mean, you see, case in point, I'm talking to people all over the world. Uh, wouldn't have been possible. So coming to the opportunity part, I think that is the opportunity side of this thing, is that the trend that was happening for the last 20 years, where people were coming together, and I think there was a term coined by some philosophers called the global village. That trend has suddenly accelerated. So suddenly the location and where you are, it's less important as it was, compared to how important it was a few months ago. For example, uh, I can tell you, in big tech companies, working from home was not the norm, actually. I know for a fact, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, working from home was an exception. You would work from home, if your kid is sick or something like that. It's not something which people would do on a routine basis. It wasn't even encouraged, actually. And now suddenly everyone is working from home. And then when we started working from home, we realized that, oh, okay, we have to invent a lot of things. So the pace of innovation has increased, actually. A lot of things have improved very, very quickly. Some of it is actually visible. A lot of it is actually behind the scenes. So if you look at Zoom, for example, Zoom uses Amazon Web Services, and
Oh.
hundreds of millions of people are Zoom. So they had to improve their infrastructure, their security. This information is public out there on the internet. The same is true for other collaboration tools, Microsoft Teams and Amazon Chime and stuff like that. So we are living in the best time in history. We are living with the tools and the information where everyone pretty much on the planet has access to the collective knowledge of humanity for the last 1,000 years. Now, if you kind of think about it, how cool is that? I mean, it is just astounding. It's hard to appreciate when you're living in that thing. Even if you go back 20 years ago, uh, I remember, one of my friends, we were intrigued about black holes. I think we were in school at that point. So what do? You go to the library, and guess what? There is not a book in the school library about black holes. So you say, okay, now I'm going to go and see. In Karachi, there used to be a British Council library and an American Central Library. They used to have, a lot of foreign books or encyclopedias, for example. Now you will go there, and now you can imagine, how time consuming and how much effort it takes. And now anyone on the planet, they can just search Google and they will have the information. So that is the opportunity. Now that thing coupled with now the location is not important anymore. That is just unprecedented. So I think the thing which we have to talk about, Spalya, is that what are the things which we can do to seize that opportunity?
Right. So this was one part of our topic, seizing the opportunity. As far as
Hmm.
the future of work is concerned, we have a question by Ms. Mazma. She asks that regarding future of work, what is your prediction about percentage of remote work in big tech companies and how can it influence Pakistan? I think it really covers up what we're going to talk about. So I thought of adding that in our session. So what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
So I think that the percentage of remote workers in big tech companies, it is going to grow considerably, because over time that taboo of working from home has just been shattered, and we are still being effective, and people have gotten used to it. So uh, I think it's hard to put a number on it, but if I were just to take a blind guess, I would still say that 50% of the people, they'll be working from home for most of their time. Because imagine the cost savings. You're saving on office space, you're saving on commute. There are all kind of benefits. I think you'll still have to go to office to mingle with people, interact with them. So now I think the question about how can it influence Pakistan is really important. And I think the next few years is going to determine that trajectory. I think that uh, a lot of things, I think there are more opportunities that are going to open up for people in Pakistan, now that remote work is not such a taboo anymore. But those legal structures, it takes time for these big tech companies, for example, to go and set up even the legal structures in Pakistan. So for example, if I wanted to go and hire 10 people in Pakistan today, we don't have an illegal entity in Pakistan. The HR, the legal, compliance, the all kind of things. And there have already been discussions on, okay, now we are going to expand, and Seattle market is saturated, and some of the other markets we are in, so where we can expand next. So I think wherever there are talented people available, all big tech companies are going to go there. And I can tell you, if you go to talk to people in Amazon, Microsoft, Google, if you talk to the leadership and you ask them what is your biggest problem, I think everyone, the biggest problem is to hire good people and retain good people. But I think the important thing is that they have to be really, really good. You have to be really, really good at uh, the things which these companies need. And that is the opportunity part. That if we can have people who are the best of the best, then it is inevitable that the opportunities will start coming to Pakistan. I think Pakistan has come over a very big hurdle, for all the terrorism and all the law and order and the security situation that improved. This COVID-19 thing is going to pass. Eventually, we are going to have a vaccine. There are some treatments, which it seems are going to work. So many smart people are working on it. This is just an aberration in time. These few months or maybe a year, that wouldn't matter. What matters is actually the long-term trend on where things are going. And to seize that opportunity, we have to be very clear to our youngsters, to anyone, that the only way to seize that opportunity is to develop your skill set and get really, really good at what you do. You have to be best of the best, and the opportunity is going to come.
Right. So you mentioned two types of people, right? First, you mentioned those people who are already passed through their education and are now in the professional world working professionally for companies. And the other part is the youngsters, because just like you said, we have to determine long term trends.
Mhm.
So these are the two kinds of people that you talked about. So, what is in it? Like for professionals, how they can seize the opportunity. For students, how can they do that? And just like you mentioned, to develop your skill sets, then what's the how in that? If someone wants to so since that you mentioned that for Pakistan, we really need to develop our skill sets, and then opportunities will come automatically. So how can we do that?
Okay, so I think the skill set, we can talk about different types of skill set, uh, because really everyone is different and everyone has different interests. But just to kind of control the scope of the conversation, this is a tech summit. So let's say we can talk about the technical skill set to begin with. And one of the biggest assets of the technical skill which the world uh, needs right now are very, very smart software developers. You have to be really good at it. And what I mean by when I say really good at it is that you you have to be the best of the best. And what I encourage people to do is that go and do some research on what it means to be the best of the best. So I can make maybe a specific recommendation. Uh, how many people can go and write uh, kernel level code, you know, and participate in a mailing list, where these things are being discussed. That's what I mean by best of the best. How many people can be contributing to Kubernetes and Apache and all of these big open source technologies? The opportunity part of it is that it is a very meritocratic space. Like when you are on internet and when you are talking to these people, all you have is an ID and an email address. Uh, they don't really care from where you are, from where you belong, what was your background. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters is that what you are bringing to the table, and that is only possible if if uh, we would decide to work very very hard to develop that opportunity, because to develop that skill set. If you're going to think about it, internet is a double-edged sword, uh, because we are living in this information age which consumes your attention. So we have a lot of information, but we actually have a dearth of attention, because all of that attention is being consumed by the constant bombardment of the information. And to be good at something, you really have to focus. And
Yeah, so I was actually about to, yep, please
yeah,
complete.
please go ahead, Swalia.
So yeah, I was actually about to come to that part because just like you mentioned that now we have a lot of information on our hands. So back in the times when you would have to go to a library to research about something, you would have to put in a lot of effort to get that book or the piece of information that you wanted. So when you
Hmm.
put in your effort, then you don't take it for granted, right?
Hmm.
But for internet, it is as easy as a Google search to go and learn whatever you want to learn. So
Hmm.
it really becomes hard to focus on one thing because there is a lot of influx of information. You see someone else doing something else, and you feel like maybe whatever I'm doing right now may not be good enough in future. So it's very easy to make transitions as well from what you're learning right now to what you can learn next. So how to stay focused on just like, and all of that you mentioned that when you were learning about distributed systems. So what I noticed was that you were really curious, you were really passionate about that topic, so you
Hmm.
went along with it, you were focused towards that.
Hmm.
But right now, if someone is passionate about one thing, then it's very hard to stay focused on that because it's very easy to make transition to other, and
Hmm.
really easy to make it to get influenced by other people as well.
Hmm.
So how to maintain that focus?
Hmm. Yeah, focus is hard, isn't it? I think as people are listening,
Yeah.
they probably looked at, some Twitter feeds and Facebook alerts and stuff like that
Mhm.
already. So you're always doing,
Yeah.
four things at a time. Uh, so I think a few things. So one thing I would say uh, is that take some time and write what you want to do. And what I mean by that, well, I actually mean what I'm saying. Writing means that you go and take a piece of paper or open a Word document, whatever, and you write, this is what I want to do, and argue with yourself. Maybe if you have a mentor, or if you have someone you can talk to, share that with him. Don't make a presentation, don't talk about it, write it. Maybe I'm influenced by Amazon as well, uh, but and once you have convinced yourself what you want to do, you have to find your own focus. There was some research done that there are only 5% of the people in the world who are self-motivated and they can stay on something by themselves. 95% of the people, they need some monitoring and supervision. I don't know if the numbers are correct, but I think the point is that the leaders are the people who don't require supervision and anyone else to motivate them, because somebody has to start the motivation part of it. What I tried to do, actually, when I was learning distributed systems, actually, now, since you asked about focus, I recall that I actually ended up printing the most important things, and I actually used to carry a file folder, and I used to
Oh.
read. So I would actually carry a highlighter. I would highlight, the important things. I will use a pen, to take notes. And I think the trigger was that I have a very close friend, He works for Huawei in Canada. So Huawei is a very interesting company. So if you're working for Huawei Research, they have closed rooms where there's no internet connection because they don't actually trust internet connection for the most secure research they are doing. So what he told me was that he said, Khurram, actually, if I have to search something, I have to come out, use a specific computer, I have to print whatever I need, and then I go back in the research lab, and my productivity has like is 10x now because I'm not distracted by okay, I had to search for I don't know, let's say databases, and then I don't start clicking on Reddit and whatever. So focus is really really important. It's very hard. I'm not trivializing it. It's not like people, you will focus from midnight to night and it's going to happen. It will take a lot of practice. But I also don't have a magic pill, I guess. I think Mozama is saying that there's some community questions, so maybe we can take a look at that as well.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the questions that has been asked is that in cloud computing, what skill set is needed to enter in this area? Is experience required to start with cloud technologies?
Not really. Well, I mean, I think you need the skill set, and the skill set. What you need. I think let's start with the basics. You need to be good at software development. You need to be good with algorithms and data structures. You should be able to write very good code, very efficient code, very very fast. And this is a skill set which anyone who is a little bit associated with some basic technology, they can acquire. You can acquire it on your own. If people are going to the university, obviously they are taking courses, but you have to take it upon yourself to get really really good at it. uh, if I would encourage people to start contributing to some open source softwares. And the reason I'm saying this thing is that usually the people who are doing open source stuff, they have a very high bar. They will not let you check in bad code. And uh, I think that would be that's a great opportunity. uh, but get good at those things. Get good at problem solving. Write a lot of code. Write a lot of good code. And you have to practice and practice and practice. There's so many resources available, I guess. I wouldn't even want to enumerate them. And I don't think that there is any one resource that is particularly better than anything else. Just start with one thing and just stick with it.
So, there's another very interesting question, and I would like
Hmm.
to include that in our discussion.
Hmm.
With increased focus of companies to open their positions for remote talent from around the world,
Hmm.
opportunity will increase, but will competition increase as well?
I think so, absolutely. uh, I'm to be transparent, I'm not familiar with the compensation rates in Pakistan, but I can tell you that the big companies, uh, they will be willing to pay a lot of money for people who are really really good. I think Allama Iqbal once said, "Kaspe kamal kun ke azize jahan shavi." That was true when he said it. It means that if you are at the top, at the zenith, kaspe kamal kun, then the world is going to love you. Ke azize jahan shavi. That is going to be true. And these companies, they are going to come after talent. They are really really hungry for talent right now. Uh, and I think absolutely when there is competition, the compensation is going to increase as well. Obviously, the compensation also depends on where. Even in the US, for example, the compensation is not same for every place. uh, like for example, if you are here in Seattle, which is or in Bay Area, which are the more expensive places to live, the compensation is going to be higher as compared to if, for example, you are in some like Texas or some rural area. And I think Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, he said that people can choose to move out of the Bay Area, but then they will have to revise the compensation. uh, but I think the overall effect is going to be more opportunities and better compensation.
Right, so there's a plus point to it as well. Okay, so one of the hurdles that we talked about into seizing the opportunity was the lack of focus. Do you think there are other hurdles that might come along the way as well? And considering the fact that we are all at home and there are pros and cons to the situation,
Yeah,
so what hurdles can come along and how can we deal with them?
I think the other big hurdle is, uh, I think I'm searching for an English word. Maybe I can find it. So it's called mayusi. You know,
I use it. Okay.
yeah, it means that you're not hopeful. I guess not being hopeful, uh, and that can be detriment to action. So it kind of becomes a vicious circle. You think the whole world is bad. Your friends are calling you, I got laid off, blah blah blah, like everything is going up in flames, and things are going to be really really bad, and there is nothing I can do about it. Because what happens with hopelessness is that we stop taking action. When you stop taking action, you stop controlling your destiny, and it kind of feeds on itself, because then you start thinking, I cannot control my destiny. And one of the things which I always tell people is that each one of us is capable of at least 3 times more than what we think we can do. There is this hidden potential in us which we have to call upon. And I think what I would add to that is that there are at least 10 times more opportunities than you think there are. Maybe more than that, but let's just start with 10x. So that, I would say, the hopelessness is the other big hurdle.
Right. So that was interesting, and I was thinking of including another part of working at home or being at home in the quarantine, and that is that a lot of people, like we have seen the numbers, and they say that there has been a surge in mental illnesses throughout. So just like you mentioned, Mayusi, there has been cases of depression and anxiety. So we are talking about seizing the opportunity and working hard and things like that. So meanwhile, in all of those noise around us, how do we care for ourselves? How do we maintain a balance between our home life and our work life? Do you have any tips on that?
I think you asked several different questions. Maybe I'll try to answer them one by one. I think you're talking about mental illness, and is there anything we can do? Or maybe if you can clarify your question. You wanted to talk about mental illness. I mean, I don't know if I can talk about that authoritatively, I guess. Uh,
So what I
but
actually mean is that there has been pros and cons of this quarantine
yes,
period, right? So
yeah,
it's very hard for people. So now when you're working from home, when you're in an office space, then you are focused on your office work. When you're at home, you focus on your work. But now your work and your home is at the same place. So
yeah,
like how to maintain a balance between two? Because if there is not a balance, then that might lead to mental illnesses. So my
yeah.
question is more focused towards maintaining a work-life balance.
Okay, uh, I can answer that. So I think one thing that has helped me, and one recommendation that we are making to our teams as well, is that define a place in your home which is your workspace. Now, if you're fortunate, Alhamdulillah, for example, I am, that I have this small room, which I kind of call my office. And I'm working when I'm here. When I'm out, I'm not working. I actually don't even take my laptop out of here, just to maintain that separation. Because you can just carry your laptop around to your bed, and then I mean, I guess phone is another one, I guess. But it doesn't really matter. You don't need a separate room. You can say, okay, this table and chair is where I work, and then I'm not working. So you have to kind of, start maintaining those boundaries. I think that's one specific recommendation I can make. Uh, And I think it's also, we can start feeling lonely. So, that's where your friends and your support circle comes. Uh, you can call upon them. Uh, I think talking to people helps.
Right. So this was another hurdle that I believe that might come along in our path to seize that opportunity. So we also talked about information. You know, there's a lot of surge of information. I recently read about a term named information pollution, like
Yeah,
consuming
yeah,
those amount of information that is either unnecessary or detrimental to you. So, would you like to talk about that information pollution? How to maintain the surge of information that we have right now?
yeah. I think the signal to noise ratio has become really bad. Uh, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
the what I'm saying is that the signal to noise ratio for information has become really
Right.
bad, and that is where I think it's becoming really harder and harder uh, for everyone to kind of sift through what is important and what is not important. But I can tell you this thing, and maybe it's a boring answer, but that's the only answer I have. The things that are important are the ones I told you. Like really, to get good at it. I can tell you, if I were to, if you were a student today, or if you're in software development, if I were to give you one specific recommendation, I would say go and brush up on your data structures, go and brush up on your algorithms, and go and write a lot of code. And you can do that actually being totally disconnected from internet, or from social media at least. I would highly recommend that. Actually read books, go towards books. And even when you're developing your skill set, at least this is my bias. So my bias is that when I'm interested in learning something, I actually try to get a good book, because I find on it's kind of I find these websites and all of these things too distracting. But it's very easy to keep clicking on those links, and before you know, an hour is gone and your day is gone. So uh, that's what I do when I'm serious about stuff. Uh, I still buy a lot of books, and learn through them. I mean, I guess you can download a PDF of a book, that's equivalent, if you can stop yourself from clicking on things.
Yeah. All right. So that was a very interesting, very good to know about your story, about your thoughts on that. Is there any last points that you would want to share? I guess we are close to the ending time. So, are there any last minutes that you would want to talk about?
Yes, I think I just want to thank everyone, for all the people who arranged this summit. I think there is a big tech scene in Pakistan right now. There are lots of people who are very energized, and they are doing great things. And I think that is very, very, that gives me a lot of hope. Uh, I think that's a great thing that is happening. Uh, I think all the collaboration that is started to happen and that will continue to happen, hopefully. Uh, I think that is also great. Uh, I don't know of all the people who have been involved in putting this thing together, but I really want to thank everyone, because I know everyone is a volunteer and it takes a lot of time and effort. You have to give from your personal time, maybe from your family time, to arrange things like that. So really, really grateful for that. I think it's just very heartening to participate in something like that, and see what's going on. And I think Ijad Lab, they have done uh, a great service to the community in trying to bring this thing together. So I think I haven't really talked to him, but Arzish Azam uh, is here from Ijad Labs. So thank you so much to the Ijad Lab team as well. It takes a lot of effort to put anything together.
Yeah, and especially in a country like Pakistan, we have a lot of internet issues, and in in that space, it's very hard to set up things like that. So same from my side, it was really enlightening, very informative to talk to you, Mr. Khurram, and it gave me a lot of insights, and I hope that it was helpful for all of our audience. And I would also like to thank the Global Pakistan Summit, PWIC, Jad Lab, They're doing great with the summit. It has been going on since 1st of June, and I believe they're doing a great job with what they're doing. And I was really glad to be a part of this. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And thank you so much, Mr. Khurram, for joining in. It was a great, great talk.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much indeed.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.